when Chicago told us that no other city in the world has tunnels. What an incredible slip-up when we are told that this site in Turkey is the largest excavated underground city in Turkey alone, and is one of several underground complexes found throughout Cappadocia, which is a region in Turkey. The underground city in Turkey could accommodate up to 20,000 people and had amenities found in other underground complexes, such as wine and oil presses, stables, cellars, storage rooms, where the mainstream historians were there. And they remember that the rooms on the left were used for studies. And this information about the rooms on the left have just been passed down from generation to generation. This is a bunch of nonsense. They don't know what activity was going on in these rooms. And we know this now. This is a guess, 100%. They don't have any idea what was going on in these rooms. And that's the reality of the situation. So let's not pretend that someone born in 1980 is going to know exactly what happened in rooms underground. You can't just walk into an abandoned building and know all about their basement. Somebody would have to tell you what each room was used for. So this story about them knowing that rooms on the left are used for studies, this story is nonsense. It's extremely important for all of us to be able to read a narrative and see through the children's stories. They are a trick, and they keep people in that trance where people would just accept it for years and never think twice. We are exposing ridiculous statements over and over, showing exactly how to detect them within a narrative so that you can go find them yourself. And this is not just in history. This kind of thing happens all the time, even to this day. It is very important to be able to critically think, to ask questions. Starting between the third and the fourth levels are a series of vertical staircases. Multiple levels under the city is exactly what we are reading, where we can now fully see that we were correct all along. We fully understand after the first 84 episodes that these cities are not just on the ground. Multiple levels under our feet all over the world, which we have shown. It's incredible. The old world creating all of this, where they had technology that would blow our minds today. And then possibly the most bone-chilling moment in all of our research so far, showing that this was a civilization that was in hiding. Hiding from what? What was the old world, the previous civilization? What were they hiding from? Where there is a large 180-foot ventilation shaft. The shaft provided water to both the villagers above, and if the outside world was not accessible, the water would be provided to those in hiding. Those in hiding. Can you believe this? Where the city accommodated up to 20,000 people underground. Multiple levels. What happened here where we all live today? Clearly the history that we have all been told is missing something massive. A mass destruction event that I believe was without a doubt within the last few hundred years. And we are all now back on the ground level. We are now the finders, or the founders, of all of the previous civilizations' work. And this is becoming extremely clear at this point. Where the caves might have been, maybe. Again, the mainstream narrative has no idea. This is the first thing that is stated, that the caves might have been built in the 8th to the 7th centuries BCE, like 2,800 years ago. Pinning this date down, maybe, as they like to say. So they pull that number out of thin air and continue on to tell us that they were replacing languages because one just died out. Of course it did, just gone. Well, maybe it did. So the inhabitants expanded their caverns to deep, multiple level structures, 85 meters below the city. And let's just open the doors on this thing. let's blow people's minds today and go deeper than ever before. Here we go. According to BBC, this is not a 4 to 5 level system. This is a site that encompasses 18 levels of tunnels. 18 levels of underground tunnels underneath the city. The largest excavated underground city in the world that we know of, where we know that this is most likely under every single major city in the world, where cave-like rooms stretch on for hundreds of miles, where it's thought that there are more than 200 small, separate underground cities that have also been discovered in this region, may be connected to these tunnels, creating a massive subterranean network. 200 separate underground cities, all connected underground, 18 levels deep. I have to be honest, this is blowing my mind at this point. Remember, this is what we are all being told. Can you imagine what we are not being told about? Are these things actually deeper than 18 levels? What kind of rooms are really down there? How far do they really reach? Because obviously they have found things that we are not allowed to know about or see within these tunnel systems. Just like in Paris, where the catacombs underground go for thousands of miles, and only part of the ossuary is open to the public. Where in France, there is a much more extensive subterranean network of tunnels under other parts of Paris, which is of course off limits to visitors. So what was going on before we all got here? Because it is so obvious at this point that what we are all being taught is complete nonsense. It is not the full story. There was clearly a mass event that made it 100% necessary for massive tunnel systems to be present underneath all of these cities. We have shown that in Chicago, the thousands of miles of tunnels there have also been closed off from the public. Closing these tunnels off from the public today shows me that there is something still in these tunnels, or a purpose for these tunnel systems that's still going on today. There is a motive to block these off from the public. Why are they all working together, blocking these tunnel systems off from the public all over the world today? Is it to hide the past? Or is it to hide what is still in there? Is it to hide what's still going on under our feet today? Or is it to hide the future? 200 separate underground cities, all connecting to create a massive subterranean network where we are being lied to about our past 100%. And we are all discovering it and taking it back live in real time, where we are told that nobody even knew about what was below their feet until 1963 came around. So 1962, nobody knew that 18 levels and 200 cities were all connected right under our feet. This is only 61 years ago. 62 years ago, this place was hiding below our feet, undiscovered. Yet they can tell us all about it today, saying they know all about the room on the left and know all about the negative 2800s, where we all know at this point that their narrative is not factual information. Rediscovering this site in 1963 by an anonymous local who kept losing his chickens while he was renovating his home. The chickens found a massive tunnel system. Tommy the chicken found a massive tunnel system 18 levels deep, where the poultry would disappear into a small crevice created during the remodel, never to be seen again, where I definitely need to get some tunnel hunting chickens. Upon closer investigation and some digging, the Turk unearthed a deep passageway. It was the first of more than 600 entrances found within private homes, leading to the subterrestrial city. In this research, I always wonder, will anything ever blow my mind more than what I've just seen? And time again, it just gets more and more incredible. 600 entrances, 18 levels of tunnel systems, 200 cities connecting through a network, all under our feet, all found by a random guy and his chickens. The previous civilization was extremely advanced, fully understanding construction, creating palaces on the ground level, palaces that are still here today, as well as massive underground tunnel systems all over the world. This technology was known all over the world. They were not riding around on donkeys with hammers in their left hand and their chisels in their right. This thought process that humans are finally to the point of getting a telephone or internet, Wi-Fi, planes, trains, cars, all of this, thinking that this is all brand new. This narrative is no longer factual information. Clearly, there have been people here before that had much more technology than we do today. Clearly, there is something else going on here where we all live today. Something that an advanced civilization needed to hide from, and they were clearly able to do so, where according to the mainstream professors, they say that creating 18-level tunnel systems, 200 cities all connecting, would have been fairly easy to do with simple tools like shovels and pickaxes. This is easy, according to the mainstream narrative. Strategically creating a ventilation shaft that provided water in and out of the underground city. Thousands of miles of tunnels, all done very easily. This could have been done with a shovel, according to the brilliant man of Florida State University. According to this guy, 2,800 years ago, they could have done this in their sleep. A spoon or a shovel would have made no difference. The cavemen of the past just had tunnel construction down. They were born with this skill, where the mainstream has no idea who created these tunnels. Because remember, the chicken just found them 61 years ago. So who should they credit these tunnels to? Well, the credit of creating them remains a partial mystery. They don't know who created them, and go on to suggest that the Hittites made them, where they may have excavated them while under attack around 1,200 BCE. So the mainstream says 2,800 years ago, and now saying 3,200 years ago, where they can just make up any date they'd like yet again, and we all believed it, and saying that it was easy. We know that these tunnel systems all over the world were not created easily. 18 levels underground is not created easily with a little shovel. And these networks are never open to the public, which shows me that they may also connect to each other all over the world. We know that humans need sunlight to survive, where according to ChatGPT, survival without sunlight would likely be limited to a matter of weeks or months. So people, humans, are not going to be able to set up camp for months underground. We simply cannot survive underground for months or years, unless of course there was a power source, a light source, electricity. Which brings up a brand new question. Whoever was in these tunnels, 18 levels deep, do we all understand how dark it would be down there? Unless they had torches, where again, ChatGPT and AI will tell you that it would be extremely unlikely for a fire torch to stay on in a tunnel system that is 18 floors deep due to the lack of oxygen, ventilation, and fuel source, where it states, even if a fire were to start in a tunnel system, the amount of fuel may be limited. It would need a continuous source of fuel. Now, this is not realistic at all in the narrative that we are all told, especially since we are told that Edwin Drake drilled the first crude oil well in 1859. So, electricity, a light bulb, is the only option, 18 levels below the ground. So going straight back to episode 10 and 38, are we 100% sure that electricity has never been here before? A light bulb. Who was living 18 levels deep in the dark? The answer is clear, that it would not be physically possible for a human to do this in the dark. And we know that a human could not survive or even construct something 18 levels down in the dark. I don't think this is looking so easy after all. And then survived there for months in the dark, proving one of two things. The first being that it was humans who constructed the tunnel systems, and they had technology, such as a light source, technology that we have been given back today. And we've discussed this so many times. But here we have physical evidence that a light source would be necessary. What we are doing right now is taking the mainstream narrative and shredding it right in half forever. They had to have had a light source 18 levels down. Nobody was constructing tunnels in the dark. And we know this. So the light bulb being invented in 1879, I believe, is 100% a lie. And we fully know this now. Now, I definitely believe it was humans. And I believe there was technology. They had a light source and so much more. And this technology is being given back to us today. But let's just pretend, since we're investigating, that there wasn't a light source, like the mainstream history is telling us. We'll just go off of their story for a second. Building tunnel systems for thousands of miles in the dark, 18 levels deep with a shovel, 200 cities, all interconnected, tunnel systems, connected all over the world, thousands of miles for living spaces, a situation that a human would not thrive in at all, where it is possible that these tunnels and underground structures were created and constructed for survival, and many did not make it, which then in turn created the catacombs. Again, I will never hold back any thought or information, so let's take this a step further. Is there a species out there that we are unaware of today? A species that we are not being told about, hidden from us, blocking us off from the proof within these tunnel systems. A species that is living or have lived right under our feet. A species that would have thrived underground. At this point, we have found so much evidence simply because we have asked questions. And I think it's important to at least ask the question so that we're all aware of it in case we come across more evidence that supports it in the future. There are facts in play here. We know that we could not survive months underground in the dark. So we have to ask, who can? And who could build underground structures 18 levels deep, 200 cities under our feet, exactly like we have shown today, in the dark? Well, it could for sure have been humans, and I'm leaning towards that. But, like I said, it's important to ask questions. Could there have been or still be a species that is off limits to the public, a species that thrive underground, where we are told that the earth was destroyed first by fire and then by ice, and one earth world, the old world, passed into the other, our civilization today? It is told in the Native American stories that ant people took groups of virtuous humans into their underground homes and protected and taught them until the earth was safe for humans again.
This is quite a famous phenomenon. There are huge cities. They look like ant farms. They look like ant farms on an enormous scale that are dug out under the earth.
Where this took place in Colorado, meaning that there must be massive tunnel systems there as well. So I will be investigating that. Now, this is of course a legend, and I'm not saying it is proof at all, but it is very interesting and something to keep in mind. That ant people are being discussed on the other side of the map, with massive tunnel systems all over the world, like we know. Who builds tunnels? Well, ants do. The last time I checked, humans are not known for their tunnel skills and living underground in the dark. But yet, we find tunnel systems everywhere, all interconnected strategically, where this is not just in Colorado. It is interesting to note that the Babylonian sky god was named Anu, where the Hopi word for ant is also Anu, and the Hopi root word for Naki means friends, suggesting that the Hopi, Anunnaki, or ant friends might have been the same group as the Sumerian Anunnaki. In multiple languages all over the world are put here to confuse us. Located in what we call today Iraq, around Baghdad. And if these were truly humans' friends, like we are told, and if we are truly in a little season, you can begin to put the pieces together and see why certain locations, such as Baghdad, are chosen to be bombed. Where in April 2003, almost the entire collection of ancient cylinder seals were stolen from the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, and it remains missing. Where the US tanks rolled into Baghdad, they broke into the museum. Looters rampaged through the halls, storerooms, and cellars, stealing more than 15,000 precious objects. Destruction of our true past, showing that this world is so much different than what we've been told, proving that there are things being hidden from us, things that would blow people's minds, species that could possibly still be here, species that are not coming from outer space, but more likely inner space, species that we were told have actually helped us, where the groups in charge have bombed their sites, destroying 15,000 proofs of our past. And we all know that it's more. When on April 14th, 2003, the Iraq National Library and National Archives were burned down, destroying thousands of manuscripts from the previous civilization, where another 170,000 artifacts were stolen or broken. Now, can you even imagine what has been destroyed and hidden from us? 170,000 artifacts in text that would expose our true past, that are now gone, where we can all see very clearly now. We can see what happened and what is going on today. Destroying our history, destroying the true past, destroying the text and stealing them so that we can no longer see them, where you can see how important our past is at this point. If you no longer understand the past, this 100% means that the future can be fully manipulated and controlled.
I even found the name of the chef, but not a word about what they were served.
Today, we are going into the Chicago Public Library's archives, locating information that will expose the tunnel systems located right under the city of Chicago. We know here on this channel that we are definitely not being told the full story regarding the tunnel systems all over the world, where they start off by telling us that the very first major tunnel project was dug under Lake Michigan to a water intake 2 miles out in 1864 to 1866. This is 29 years before the invention of the power tool. Digging massive tunnel systems under the lake, where it goes on to say that Chicago kept on digging away, creating thousands of miles of underground structures, where in my opinion, this is the beginning of the narrative for these tunnels that were created by the previous civilization. Thousands of miles of underground structures right underneath the city of Chicago, all according to public records in the Chicago Public Library. So let's go deeper. I was able to locate someone that has recently been inside the tunnel systems, and they shared what they saw with me. And now I'm going to share it all with you. We have seen these photos. They are on the internet, and here it is today. We can see that the railway is still there on the floor, looking exactly like we see in these photos that we are told is from pre-1906. Over 120 years ago, I was sent other photos that I think you will all want to see. These tracks lead throughout the entire tunnel system, using them as transportation throughout the entire city. We have shown in episode 42 how these tunnel systems are in every single city in the world, how they connect all of the buildings together underground. These buildings are bigger than we can see. There is so much more under our feet than we realized before, where we can see that this tunnel system leads right to the Chicago City Hall, a building that we were told was constructed in 1911. Of course, holding the fire story, where this is a nod, meaning one of three things, or a combination of them. In my opinion, of course. 1, it's letting them all know which building is from the old world. 2, where the catacombs are located. And or 3, where the tunnel systems are located. I believe it is a nod to these three things at this point. And we need to remember this for the future and keep track of what we continue to see throughout our research. They also tell us that there was a previous city hall. Now, it's very interesting that they tell us that these tunnels were constructed by the Chicago Tunnel Company. Great name. And their history begins by letting us know that there were initial tunnels. Initial tunnels. Are these not the tunnels that were found? You tell me. Especially when they go on to say that the city of Chicago had no idea what to do with these tunnels, granting the newly formed Illinois Telephone and Telegraph Company the rights to construct utility tunnels under the streets of Chicago in 1899. So 1899, they start making tunnels for phone lines. I thought we were told by the Chicago Public Library in their archives that they were digging thousands of miles of tunnels decades before this. That's right. We were told this. And the first telephone in Chicago didn't come until 1877. So what was Chicago doing digging tunnels for thousands of miles before the telephone? Because we know this wasn't the true purpose of these tunnels, and they are trying to push it off that they needed the tunnels for telephone cables in 1899, where we can see very clearly that the dates are beginning to collide, the very beginning of a massive narrative slip-up. So let's keep going. They continue on by saying that the initial plans for the tunnels called for filling them with phone cables, when we just showed that that is not true at all. This was not the initial plans for the tunnels. Not even close. We have found something massive, in my opinion. A massive lie. And here's where they're going to try and explain why they have railways in all of these tunnels. When the city, of course, said no, you cannot use the manholes to get the cables into the tunnels. Of course they did. They say, yes, we need you to dig tunnels for our phones. But no, you can't use the manholes to actually get the cables down there. I'm going to ask you, how ridiculous does that sound? Refusing to permit manholes through which cables could be unreeled into the tunnels. The plans were then changed, of course. Changed to include rails for hauling cable spools through the tunnels. Incredible. Where the city was largely unaware of the nature of tunneling. They didn't even know how big these tunnels were or where they went, saying they were unaware. Unbelievable. The clearest proof that we have ever been told on the tunnels, in my opinion. A huge sentence right there for our research. Can you see that these tunnels were constructed by the previous civilization now? Are you able to see the truth that a previous civilization was here, much closer to our timeline than what we have been told? And all of their work has been left behind for us to see, for us to uncover. Where the first 16 miles of tunnels had to be excavated to remove earth carefully and systematically from an area in order to find buried remains. Now, we remember that the public library told us that there are thousands of miles of underground structures. Is this limited to just tunnels? Or is this another proof that there are buildings, structures, exactly like they say, right under our feet, underground? Thousands of miles of underground structures. What are we seeing today? I think we have unlocked something massive. I think they are very aware of what is under the ground at this point, and they were rediscovering it in the 18 and 1900s. And we are now following behind them right now. It's all out there. If you're able to read with open eyes, it clearly states that there are thousands of miles of underground structures right under the city of Chicago with maximum use of scarce real estate. Is this not exactly what we want to see? Is it not putting everything together for us? Connecting it all, showing that buildings are underground, real estate underground. Thousands of miles of underground structures right under the city of Chicago. We now know that this is here. It is no longer a question of if the previous civilization's work is underground. It's now a matter of just finding them and exposing them to everybody in the world. We now know that they are there. We have photos of inside the tunnels. We know that they lead to all of the buildings. Thousands of miles of tunnels, underground structures, underground real estate. We know that there are thousands of miles of tunnels. We were told this, yet here in 1910, the system is only showing us 60 miles on the map. So we know that there's a lot of tunnels that are not being shown to us today. And we know that these tunnels connect to these buildings, and I'm gonna show that soon, including the City Hall. It's so interesting to me that they leave this part of the story out every single time. We have never seen in any construction story that they connected the local tunnel to the building. We don't see that the City Hall also has a tunnel system connected to it within the narrative. Yet we know that the City Hall is 100% connected to this massive tunnel system. I have also located first-hand accounts of these tunnels where this individual worked at the Field Museum of Natural History in the late 1970s, where he explains that the building was a customer of the Chicago Tunnel Company, where the tunnel was connected via an elevator. And he explains that after all of the freight cars were abandoned, they were destroyed and scrapped, except for one, which remained in the Field Museum's sub-basement. A basement to the basement is what we are reading. This building is much bigger than we are told. Cut off from the rest of the tunnel system was a train from the past. The manager of the physical plant, Norman, took this individual down there, and he says it seemed at the time they would remain there forever. Well, no. They removed them in the late 1990s, of course. And then the Illinois Railway Museum took them over. Supposedly saved and are now preserved there, where you can read about them here. Here, meaning 404, page not found. So I would be shocked, personally, if they're still there today, just knowing what we know. For anyone that wants to check it out, it is located at 7000 Olson Road, Union, Illinois, right outside of a town called Marengo. Very interesting stuff. I would love to know if those carts are still there, or if they would tell us that they ever had them, and if they would have a further story about them. So this story continues on to say that on April 13th, 1992, what some have called the Chicago Flood began, where contractors accidentally disturbed the clay surrounding one of the freight tunnels. Of course they did. Do you think this was an accident? You gotta let me know in the comments. Where the leak wasn't taken seriously at first, where it turned into a breach near the Chicago River, with eventually hundreds of millions of gallons of water flowing into the tunnel system and into the sub-basements of many Chicago buildings. Again, I'm gonna ask, knowing what we know, do you think this was an accident? Or do you think this was a destruction project where a man named Bruce had his 15 minutes of fame because he was the only recognized expert on the tunnel system, where the great majority of people, of course, had no idea such a thing even existed? Where I think that 20 to 30 years later, now, we may be right back to that point, showing how fast people forget things, showing that the majority of people, yet again, need to be shown these tunnels and understand what is below their feet.
Now, by September, they had built a complete ramp. I'd like to see that happen today this fast. I'd like to see that happen today this fast. 40 feet of water. And there's another 2 floors below that. and there's another 2 floors below that. For me, it started back in high school and college, and one day the light bulb went off. Gee, my dad is the night supervisor at Marshall Fields. Maybe they have an opening. And they did. And they did. There's water in the Pittsfield building, and Marshall Fields, and the City Hall, and this place and that place. And we don't know where it's coming from. And I thought, I know. All those places had one thing in common. All older buildings, all older buildings, all older buildings, all older buildings that were connected to the freight tunnels still.
And a very interesting note here, down at the bottom of the article, where on September 1st, 2000, the Central Electric Railfans Association hosted a rare inspection tour of parts of the underground tunnel system. Unfortunately, we are told that this is not likely to be repeated anytime soon. On the wake of something that happened in 2001, there are now security concerns. The old tunnel system, a vital part of Chicago's infrastructure, a vital part of the old world, our true history, our true past, is now closed off from public access. Now, it is very possible that these tunnels were found, connecting the old world buildings together, connecting underground real estate, structures, as we were told. Finding these tunnels, and then our civilization constructed their form of transportation throughout this system, with the railways being laid after finding these tunnels. This is a possibility, but in my opinion, there is one thing that is for sure, is that these tunnel systems, these structures that we are unable to see now, have been there for a very long time. Much longer than we have been told. And they are still here from the previous civilization. A civilization that was here only a few hundred years ago, in my opinion. Using electric locomotives in the underground tunnel. Very interesting. Naming this the Great Chicago Tunnel from 1908. Do you live here in this area today? Here's a public map, the one that they are showing us, from 1915, of the Chicago tunnel system that sits right below your feet today. Remember, there are thousands of miles of tunnel systems in this city alone. So this is obviously not everything, not even close, but it does show that there is much more below our feet right now. With another map titled Chicago Freight Tunnel System, Underground Transportation. Zooming in, we can see that the public was allowed to know that they are 40 feet below the surface of Chicago.
40 feet of water, and there's another 2 floors below that. 40 feet of water, and there's another 2 floors below that.
And pass under the river 11 times, holding 734 intersections, 26 private connections. Very interesting. Probably more than that. What do you think? Going on to the back of this thing, where it tells us that many warehouses and stores have direct private connections with the tunnels. These connections consist of approaches, switches, shafts, and elevators, which carry the tunnel cars to the levels above. And this is where things get very interesting, if they haven't been already. How tunnels are built in. In many of these cases, the tunnel connection was a part of the original plan of building construction. Do I need to read that again? I will anyway. Was a part of the original plan of building construction. This was done on purpose. And I have not seen one time in a narrative where they tell us about the construction of a building's tunnel system, where it should definitely say that according to this document, where they state that that was a part of the building's construction. There has not been a single time that the narrative has explained how this was done, or even mentioned that a tunnel was connected to the building. Was this an attempt to hide that these buildings now hold this tunnel system? A tunnel system that is massive, right under our feet, that is no longer available to the public after 2001. Can you see that these tunnel systems may be used for something else now? You tell me. Again, I'll ask, now knowing what we know, where are we really? Do we fully understand that there are more than just hallway-type tunnels right under our cities?
I even found the name of the chef, but not a word about what they were served. Not a word about what they were served.
the ones that we are shown and told about, where I believe that we are past this point in our knowledge. I think we know that there is so much more below the ground. Structures, rooms, buildings, places that we are definitely not allowed to go or ever see. If they have hallways, they have more.
This building was probably about 12 stories and had almost as many floors below ground as above. Some buildings in the loop had their basements lowered so they could meet the tunnel. This is one of them. I believe this is one over at near Monroe and Wabash, where they've actually lowered the basement.
These underground tunnels, bases, these are not new ideas, and we know this. And we have seen a lot of lies, but this one is the biggest of them all. Telling us that no other city has tunnels. Are you kidding me? We know that they do. We have seen this. This is from a pamphlet issued probably, maybe. It might have been in the early 1940s, but they can't seem to remember anything from 80 years ago. By the Chicago Tunnel Company to advertise its services to local businesses and railways. So I'm going to ask you all a question. Do you really think that the tunnels are all done now? Do you think they haven't been expanded? Do you think that in the last 100 years, they just stopped making tunnels? Or do you think that Chicago has an even bigger, more in-depth underground system than we could ever imagine? Do you think every city might have this? Let me know.
They are in Wabash over at the Palmer House. What's really odd is I found this photo long after I had taken this photo at the exact same location.
17 East Monroe Street, Chicago, Illinois. We have the Palmer House Hotel, where we are told that there have been multiple Palmer House hotels on this exact same site. When the first Palmer House was built as a wedding present in September of 1870, because we all know that building a massive hotel in downtown Chicago and giving it away as a wedding present in the 1800s was very normal. This was a common gesture back then. Do you think these photos where buildings are bigger underground, do you think that these are just myths now? Let me know in the comments below. The Illinois Tunnel Company. What a name. We have tunnel systems documented on atlasobscura.com stating that these tunnels are connected to these buildings that I'm going to name right now. The City Hall, which we know, Merchandise Mart, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Chicago Tribune Building, the Civic Opera House, the Field Museum, and dozens of others, where they were pumping tunnel air into theaters and hotels as natural air conditioning. In 1959, the Chicago Tunnel Company went out of business, of course, and sold everything for $64,000. To who? Who bought this company and acquired all of their assets, or the old world's assets? According to the Chicago Tribune, the city assumed control of the tunnel system. So there we have it, where we find out that more buildings are connected, or they used to be, when in the early 1940s, the subway cut it off from the major department store clients along State and Dearborn, such as the Boston store. They have an underground tunnel. Carson Perry Scott got one too. The Fair, the Davis store, Mandel Brothers, and F.W. Woolworth and Company. All of these buildings got a tunnel back then, all connecting these buildings. And we of course remember the accidental flood from 1992, where it was of course an accident. Wait, what is this? A court case where it was revealed that the city was aware the tunnel was leaking before the flood. And the city basically allowed it to happen, where they knew it was leaking and did not properly maintain the tunnel, allowing for the breach and the destruction of the tunnel. Very interesting information. I wonder why they allowed it in 1992, where we are told that a man named George W. Jackson led the Illinois Tunnel Company. And when you begin to dig into this guy's narrative, it begins to reveal everything. When we find an article in the Chicago Examiner from January 1909, this entire operation, this company, is tied to something very strange here. Remember when we were told the public map in 1910? Well, right before 1910, an event took place in 1909, 1 year before. The cost of construction had bankrupted the Illinois Tunnel Company, which is the exact same year. All a coincidence, of course, that this event took place as well. 1909, same year. 67 didn't make it. By fire. In an unprecedented lake disaster. Flames follow explosions. All of this happening 2 miles from the shore, inside the tunnels, where 48 were recovered. And it is known that many others are beneath the surface of the lake. Again, I'm gonna ask you all, are we sure that these fire narratives are what they are? Are they not nods telling us what they found? I'm simply asking questions because we have seen so many times that these questions end with answers. Exact identification will probably never be made of many of them, for most of them are headless, burned or dismantled, all connected to George W. Jackson Company. Were these bones found within the tunnels, possibly bones of the past, and explained away with this narrative? Trapped in the tunnel 160 feet below the ground, a fire that was actually an explosion, according to Chicagoology.com, where the source of the fire is that an explosion happened 3 minutes before the flames. Destruction of the past? Destruction of what they found? Where the dates are exact, and now switching from the Illinois Tunnel Company to the Chicago Tunnel Company. Where another idea that I'm going to throw out there right now is that, is it possible that these tunnel systems were, of course, there from the past, from the previous civilization, but did these tunnels hold things inside them? Things that we have seen in episodes 72 and 78. Were these tunnel systems found underneath Chicago? Thousands of miles of tunnels. Where else have we seen this? Odessa? Paris? What are inside those tunnels today? Have these tunnels in Chicago been cleaned out of what was once there and then given a new purpose? What are we finding? The deeper we go, the more information we gather. Thinking logically, why would they go through the trouble to create thousands of miles of tunnels under the city when they had dirt roads, creating all of these tunnels and only to use them from 1904 to 1959, using them for only 55 years, and then blocking them off to the public? I believe that I have found possibly the clearest proof that these buildings are much older than we are told, and clearly built by a much more advanced civilization that was here before our current timeline, that we aren't being told about. We have the Pancharatna Govinda Temple, where the trees, the grass, the weeds, the rest of it are totally overgrowing and covering the structure, which would take decades of zero maintenance, which would also mean that in order for this story to be true, the one that they're telling us, they would have had to build the building and then left it immediately after, without it even ever being used. So when I tell you the mainstream story, remember this. This photo was taken in the 1800s by James Ferguson. This is the Pancharatna Temple. And when we take a look at the mainstream narrative, it's going to prove that they have no idea how to explain this one. A massive, perfect temple located in Pattaya, India. And today I want to show you just how horrible the mainstream historians are at their job. They tell us that the palace is reported to have been built at some point between 1823 and 1895, at some point. But they have no idea. But when we go back to episode 50 and read the narrative about this arch, they knew all about the history and told us that it was constructed in the second half, not the first half, the second half of the 3rd century BC. Because they, of course, know all about the negative 300s, but have zero idea what's going on between 1823 and 1895. Can you see how insane this is? They can't have both. Either you know what's going on or you don't. So it's reported to have been built. Reported by who? Did it get reported by Ron Burgundy? Who is the reporter, for one? And for two, their report is pretty terrible, giving us a 72-year gap. And on top of all of this, the photo has the number 73 written on it, which of course could mean anything and could be wrong, but let's pretend it's the year 1873, since remember, James Ferguson, the man who actually took this photo, died in 1886. This would make sense. This would mean that the mainstream history is completely wrong. And there is no way that it could have been built at any point after 1873, since we have a picture of it here. And it definitely couldn't have been built after Ferguson's death in 1886. Yet they tell us that it could have been built in 1895. It's incredible. And a clear lie, since we have a photo of it and proof that it was here long before that and found with nature growing all over it. And here it sits today. So clearly they have uncovered more from the surrounding area that was also buried by nature. And when you zoom in on the building, this was something that was constructed in the 1800s by Donkeys Incorporated. And we can see that this is definitely the same building with the same 3 arches at the bottom. It's absolutely incredible. So I wonder if this is the way that a lot of these old world buildings were found, with trees and grass all over them. But we just never had a photo of it. And this gets even more interesting. When we take a look at this place from the sky, this was not a random building sometime in 1800. And I want to make that point very clear. We have a water system that has 90-degree angles surrounding this building. Not only that, but there are multiple temples. It honestly looks like a fortress. So we have these other structures within this area, with this one being the biggest of them all. And we have some damage done to the side here, which I wonder if it depicted something before they destroyed it that they did not want us to see. Now I'm gonna drop this view down on Google Earth and show you the detail of this place, and show you that this is obviously not from the last 200 years. We have seen so many buildings from the USA that were supposedly built in the last 200 years, or even in our last episode when we showed the Windsor Castle, which was built 1,000 years ago, supposedly, which is in perfect shape. In my opinion, this building that we're looking at today is thousands of years old, possibly covering not just one population reset, but many. I don't think the 1800s were the first reset. I think that whoever controls the resets fully understands how to execute them and have perfected them over time. They've tweaked them, giving us back less and less technology each time that was once here before the new timeline is revealed, which is why our architecture gets worse and worse. In 100 years, 99% of our homes with plastic siding without maintenance would basically be gone, which in my opinion is exactly what they want. So when the next reset comes around, if there is one, there's no proof that we were ever here. Here we have the Manitowoc County Courthouse, located in Wisconsin, where we have a building that is much older than we were told. And if you've seen the first 53 episodes, you'll enjoy this. The current courthouse is the 3rd courthouse to serve Manitowoc County. The first courthouse was built in 1839. 13 years later, we are told that in 1852, this one burned down in a fire. Of course it did. Because 99% of the old world buildings, as we know, hold a fire story. The fire story is the nod to the hidden group, in my opinion. That this building is from the previous civilization, and we did not construct this building in our current timeline. In my opinion, this is the only courthouse that has ever been here, yet they tell us the 2nd courthouse was all done and wrapped up in 1857 on the same site as the present courthouse. Of course it was. This is the same courthouse. In just 48 years, we are told that this one was outdated and needed to be replaced, because in the 1800s, they could be picky and build a new building whenever they wanted. A time before the power tool. They could just knock buildings down and replace them very easily. Oh wait, no. They didn't knock the 2nd one down? The 2nd courthouse was moved a block to the south. So now they're just moving buildings around. After going through the trouble of moving this brand new courthouse that was supposedly too old, they demolish it to make way for a jail and a sheriff's department. This is incredible. Does this sound shady or what? Here we go. The courthouse that is a masterpiece and will be here forever was built in just 2 years, in 1905 to 1907, by another company with a guy and his sons, of course, because they can't seem to leave the sons part out. And then we get the old severe storm damaged the glass. The old world dome was destroyed by some rain. Sure it was. And then they rebuilt it with stainless steel, of course. I would love to know what that dome really looked like before it was destroyed. And what was it made of before they destroyed it? And what kind of artwork did it have? And all of this is not even the craziest part. The guy and his son's construction company were so good at their job that they could knock this palace out in less than 24 months, over 120 years ago. So their resumes should be long listed and hold other masterpieces. Right? Wait, no? What is this? George Rickman and Sons Construction Company only constructed 2 buildings in their entire existence, and both of them in the year 1906. So not only were they knocking out 2 palaces, so they say, but they were also doing it at the exact same time, and then never built anything ever again. How is that believable at all? Over 120 years ago? Well, it isn't. Especially when they were located in different states. One located in Benton, Iowa. The other one located in northern Wisconsin, which is over a 5-hour drive in 2024, over 300 miles apart. Yet they are laying the cornerstone supposedly in late 1905, mid-October, and completing it basically that same year in 1906. And if you're on the fence and you haven't seen the fire narrative before this episode, get ready to have your mind blown. We already know that the Manitowoc County Courthouse holds the fire narrative and was supposedly built by the same people in the same year. The Benton County Courthouse, the first courthouse where the county officers occupied 2 rooms. In the supposed unfinished second floor, before the building was destroyed by a fire the following year. Now, the third courthouse was built in December of 1856. The second and third courthouses were built on the same location as the present courthouse, the 4th courthouse on this site. At which point can we all agree that the mainstream narrative of our supposed history is a complete lie? It is the exact same story over and over and over, all over the world, where we get multiple courthouses on the same exact site, and they all light up in fire somehow, and they all have the same architect and his sons, with 0 details ever given to us on the actual construction process. And then you go look at the finished product, and it's a masterpiece, something that will last forever, and something that we don't recreate today, and something that was supposedly built in 1 year or less, and we have never seen this happen. And we have so many more resources than they did, supposedly. And then whenever we're told that they're gonna go renovate one of these buildings, the renovation process takes multiple years and an incredible amount of manpower. And it only took the 1800s and early 1900s people 1 year or less. It doesn't make any logical sense when you really think about it. The Benton County Courthouse never had 3 previous courthouses, in my opinion. This is the only courthouse, and these stories are just that. They're stories. They're not true. A building that features a 112-foot central tower. It contains a 4-faced illuminated clock, a 1,500-pound B-flat bell, and is topped with a dome. The 2-story structure sits on a raised basement. All of this, we are told, was built in a year or less, while the builder was off in northern Wisconsin at the exact same time. And both buildings holding basically the exact same narrative, where they have multiple buildings on the same site, and both buildings holding the fire narrative. Can you see the lie very clearly now? And are you ready for the most eye-opening part of this story? The part that gives this all away, that this is mathematically impossible for it to be true, considering everything that we have talked about to this point. Here we go. The Manitowoc County Courthouse was supposedly completed in 1905, when the Benton County Courthouse started that same exact year and was completed in 1906. And the Manitowoc County Courthouse, again, holds its fire story in 1852. What are the odds that the Benton County Courthouse stood unfinished until the exact same year of 1852, when the county officers occupied 2 rooms in the unfinished building, when it was destroyed by a fire the following year? The fire narrative is the key and the nod that these buildings were built by the previous civilization. When you know what you're looking for, it becomes extremely clear that the narrative is a lie. And these buildings have a hidden past that we are not being told about. Both fires happening a year apart, having the same builder characters with sons attached to the name, having the same year of construction. Both narratives having multiple courthouses located on the exact same site, located over 300 miles apart, built with perfection, and both lasting forever. And we all remember that George Rickman and his sons only built 2 buildings in their entire existence, which would never hold up in court, since it wasn't like they were out there building 7-Elevens. They built 2 massive palaces with perfection and fast. They would be the most sought after construction company in the world today, based on what they did. And they did it all with 0 formal training, which was standard back in the 1800s, according to the mainstream historians. So 2 buildings for them, both in the exact same year, totally believable, no. And then we have the supposed architect, Bell and Detweiler, where you will all enjoy to hear that Bell and Detweiler also only constructed 2 buildings in their entire existence. Also, in the exact same year. And both buildings just happen to be palaces that last forever. How can this be possible? You would think that these 2 would team up for a few more projects, just for old time's sake. And maybe build some houses for some people. Maybe a local business would be interested in hiring them. No? It never happened again. Just 2 massive buildings in the exact same year. And then they both call it a career. If I'm being totally honest, this isn't even close to possible. This is honestly incredible that this is what we've been told. And this is the explanation for these buildings. How have we all just allowed this for so long? Could you imagine today that Bell and Sons, with 0 backstory, both knocking out these courthouses and state capitol buildings in the exact same year? One in Iowa, the other one in South Dakota, and 0 information on their training processes. Every architect will tell you, and every engineer will tell you, that this is impossible. Where are the materials coming from? How many men did they have working on the project? Were the workers also trained somewhere? Or were they just local prisoners, like we've been told so many times? And then after all of this, they get these buildings done with perfection, and nobody ever hires them again. With nothing on their resume. They were hired for 2 palaces in the exact same year. It just isn't logical. And both the architect and the construction company definitely would have built something else after these 2 incredible buildings. All right, so here we have the Saints Peter and Paul Church, with a location that you would think that they might want to change, since it is a church. Located at 666 Filbert Street, San Francisco, California. I mean, what is going on here? When I saw this, I couldn't believe my eyes. This is the address that they give a church? Really? So not only is the address bizarre, so is the history, where we're told that this is the 2nd church on this site. The first one being built in 1884 and was destroyed by an earthquake 22 years later. So the next one was built on the same site of 666 Filbert Street. And of course, when you dig deeper, you get more than just an earthquake. You get the fire narrative and the nod that this building is from the old world, where the church succumbed to the destructive forces of the 1906 earthquake and subsequent fire, leading to them demolishing it. How long did it take to construct the first one? Who was the architect? The construction company? How many men did it take to build the first one? Because this is the first church that is here today. This is the only church that's ever been on this site of 666 Filbert Street, San Francisco. And we know that now. And we also know that they want to destroy these buildings and have for a very long time, because these buildings give it all away, that the narrative isn't logical. This supposed second church, which we know is the first church, but the second one, we are told, was completed in 1924. 2 years later, in 1926 and 1927, St. Peter's and Paul Church was bombed 4 times. What were they bombing and destroying inside and on the outside of this church that they didn't want us to see? Dates? Artwork of the old world? The bombs were always placed at night, and no one was ever around to see what was going on. Bombs would go off every few months, and for the clear giveaway that this, in my opinion, was a planned operation. Another bomb went off inside the church, January 1927. Though there was a police officer monitoring the church, he was unable to catch the bomber. Today, I'm going to introduce an alternative conclusion as to why these palaces are all over the world today. I'm going to attempt to take our thought process a little deeper. And we're also going to see a palace in Russia that we are told has a painter that died years before the construction was even close to being done. Because we all paint our house before it's built. No. Right here on stpetersburg.com. We are given a panoramic shot of St. Petersburg, Russia, with perfect dirt roads, where I don't see a single person. Massive buildings everywhere, yet not one person. These photos are from 1861, only 3 years after they say that this was constructed. You can see this palace in the fourth shot in the panoramic view, where it's becoming clearer and clearer that these cities all over the world, palaces, were constructed by a massive civilization, one that was here before us, a civilization that had incredible technology, and a civilization that was here only a few hundred years ago, a civilization that is clearly being hidden to us. Yet their construction sits here looking at us straight in the face. These photos are alarming in my opinion. Everyone should be asking questions at this point. One question should be, who paved all of this dirt? Like it's all perfectly prepared for these photos. And I'm going to suggest an alternative, much less likely idea, an idea that should just be out there for people to think about. And possibly not just an alternative idea, but something that could definitely be an addition to what we have already known. That there was a previous civilization here before us. But after doing countless hours of this research on this topic, after looking at these photos, where these cities look like they were on display for all of us, almost like they were prepared for us, cleaned up perfectly, and ready for us all to come into the picture in the late 1700s. An idea that I'm just going to throw out there into the world for everyone to think about, instead of being just stuck in my head, is, are there two groups? One that actually cared about us, possibly created us, and set this stage for us, and one that does not care about us, with the corrupt groups still being here, and the other group that built our incredible stage and felt that we deserved the greatest palaces to live in and use. The group that fully understood this type of incredible construction, possibly no longer here, with a corrupt group that ended up wanting to control an entire population, us. Changing the narrative to all of these buildings, hijacking all of the buildings, calling them Capitol buildings, banks. Buildings for them now, and no longer for us. Buildings that were always and originally meant for us, where they are now used as this group's offices to control us. Destroying the rest of the buildings with wars, great fires that weren't so great, tricking us for 200 plus years, giving us a ridiculous story that a group of people that had a population of basically nobody, that rode around on donkeys with no technology, were the master builders of stone-carved and marble basilicas that stand the test of time all over the world, when in reality it was a much more powerful group that is no longer here, or maybe they are, and watching from a distance. A group that set the stage for all of us, built all of these incredible buildings that we have been talking about this entire time. Temples, cathedrals, basilicas, Capitol buildings, houses that are white, and no, not the vinyl siding ones. Is it possible that we are so much more important, so much more powerful than we are told, and completely tricked and manipulated into thinking that we are just these lazy pawns to these corrupt individuals that stole our buildings, our land, making us feel like we're born just to work and sleep, just to struggle over and over, when in reality, our lives are so much more important and incredibly valuable. In reality, they have stolen our buildings, taken them from us, and giving us these depressing, ugly boxes in return, which are demoralizing to look at. We know that the historical narrative that we are currently given is complete nonsense. We have proven this, in my opinion. We have shown massive flaws, including the population lie, where supposedly we are being told that nobody wants to have kids with anyone for thousands of years. And then in the 1700s, out of nowhere, the human mind changes for the first time ever. Just a random fluke, we are told. And people finally enjoy each other's company and finally want to have kids with each other. And this narrative was accepted for far too long. What we don't know, and what we all want to know, is where we are. What is the truth? Who actually built these buildings? They are incredible, and nothing like the buildings that we build today. It's built by a different mindset. They're built with much more technology, much more information that we do not have. We are not taught these skills in our highest architecture classes. Which class shows us how to knock out a palace in a year with no power tools, no light bulbs, no shipping companies, nothing? That chapter was left out of the college architecture book. We all know this. These buildings that we all see in every single one of our cities, they tell a much different story than what we've all been told by the mainstream narrative. And this narrative, this lie, it only helps one group, and the group is not us. There was a previous civilization that was here before us, a civilization that was massive and held incredible technology. But there is a very real possibility in my mind that there are also higher powers that are possibly still here that set this current stage for us. And the game has now been corrupted. We don't advance our overall thought process by simply being quiet. Who maintained all of this dirt? We're being told that a civilization of no people had the capabilities to construct an entire palace city. And this city will last forever. Yet when you look at the finished product, there isn't a single person anywhere. It's empty. And here we have St. Isaac's Cathedral, located in St. Petersburg, Russia. And the inside just blows your mind, with massive doors, incredible detail, with a height of over 330 feet. And we are told the exact same story that we've seen all over the world, that this wasn't even the first structure. This one was the replacement. In fact, it was the fourth consecutive church standing at this place. The exact same location has had 4 churches here. This is what we're being told. I'm shocked that this pattern, that 4 buildings have been on the same site. How has this pattern not been identified before? We see the exact same thing, even over in Texas, when they have 7 courthouses on the exact same site. We've seen it all over. It's a repeating pattern. All of these narratives all over the world are, in my opinion, created by the same source. And in my opinion, based on everything that we've seen, it's an AI, very similar to ChatGPT. This palace has bronze doors, internal columns, statues on the inside, and of course, the interior was originally decorated with paintings that have been since painted over. And supposedly they reproduced them. They had to get rid of the originals because they deteriorated because of the cold and damp conditions inside. This is incredible how they get away with destroying the originals over and over. We are told that this building was constructed between 1818 and 1858. When we can easily catch this narrative in a lie, when we go to Vatican City and take a look at Sistine Chapel, where Michelangelo painted this in 1508 to 1512, supposedly, predating this Russian painting by over 300 years. And it's holding up just fine, unless, of course, Michelangelo had a better paint set. It's ridiculous. So the paintings should have been just fine in Russia. And this is when the story gets even weirder, when they tell us that during World War II, the dome was also painted over, making it gray, to avoid attention from enemy aircraft. So I hope we're all seeing very clearly at this point what these wars, seeing what their true purpose was. Clearly destroying these buildings, removing the inside because it was too cold. Give me a break. And they say the work was never completed. But when you take a look at the inside, it looks pretty completed to me. It doesn't even look like they missed one spot. And they tell us that the original paintings were done by this Karl guy and other random Russian masters of the day. And of course, no need to name these Russian masters of the day, but here is Karl. It was the pose of the day. Could you imagine if we gave information the way the mainstream narrative did? Just saying they were the flavor of the day, painted by the painters of the day, like it's some sort of special on the menu. It's incredible how this was accepted as fact for so long. It's shocking. And Karl died before the construction was done. Do we all paint our houses before the construction is done? Or is this the last step in the process? It is the last step. You don't paint your house years before it's done. He died in 1852. We are told that the building is done in 1858. So this guy that put the finishing touches on the palace is dead 6 years before the building is done. So we know we don't paint our house 6 years before it's done. Oh, and if we go down here at the bottom, we can see that this was his self-portrait. Very nice choice, Carl. Let's take a look at the technologies of this palace, where William Handyside is the engineer. So Handyside is the guy, where they get 10,000 tree trunks and throw them into the marshy banks. So they want us to believe that there's just a bunch of tree trunks under this palace. And I know they're a bunch of liars at this point, so when we see something like this, I know to go deeper. This statement makes me think that there is something under this palace that has significant value. When we can see that this building has artwork and exhibits from a museum that were hidden away in the cathedral's basement. So now we know that this palace has a basement with valuables in it, and all chalked up to this war again. So they lay down these 10,000 tree trunks on a marshy bank, and then knock out a massive basement on top of all that, and then build a palace and paint it before it's done, and then get rid of those paintings because it's a little too cold, but never finish those paintings, of course. Oh, and this is the fourth palace on the same site. It sounds like a lie. I wonder how much bigger this palace is underground, like we have seen in episode 44, when we caught a tunnel on camera from the Illinois State Capitol building while they were in the middle of destroying something and just call it a renovation project. So here's the construction photo that they give us. A photo from expresstoroussia.com. There's a big problem though with this picture. It's a drawing. And we know that they had cameras in 1816. So why give us a drawing? I've said this before, but it's so true. For all we know, they just drew this last night. It's a drawing. It's obviously not proof of construction, not even close. Here we are told we have a view of the cathedral surrounded by wood scaffolding from another drawing, drawn 3 years ago by a master drawer of the day, as the mainstream narrative likes to say. It's incredible. So in 1931, they turned this cathedral into a museum when, under the Soviet government, the building was stripped of religious trappings. In 1931, it was turned into the Museum of the History of Religion and Atheism. So the complete opposite of a cathedral. Going back to my suggestion that there's possibly a group that wants to take these buildings that were originally meant for us in a positive manner and turn them into the complete opposite, removing everything that was once given to all of us, a cathedral, changed to a museum of history and atheism, where the original dove structure was removed and replaced by a Foucault pendulum, which we all know at this point is some weird symbol for this group. Let's check this palace out, now that we know that this building's narrative is forever in shreds. So here we have the St. Isaac's Cathedral, and right over here we have another building that'll no longer be hidden in plain sight, the Mariinsky Palace. Now let's have some fun, and make sure you don't confuse it with the theater. And thank you for letting us know about this masterpiece. Is there a more entertaining topic? Finding buildings, palaces, that make no sense in the fabricated timeline that we're given. Palaces that we can actually go and visit, especially when we're told that this was built in a year. And unfortunately, the original building was destroyed by a fire in 1859. Adding to our fire total. Is your mind blown yet? Should we go deeper? The new one, the one that's here today, the palace opened up the very next year. So the theater's narrative is clearly a mess. So let's go back to this palace, where in 1839, they were building palaces as wedding presents. This is incredible. Built in 5 years, from 1839, and wrapped it right up in 1844. And then, of course, taken over by the Russian government and off limits to the public. Were these buildings built for them? It's definitely an interesting thought that these narratives are thrown together by this group as a successful attempt to steal these buildings from us and clearly getting away with it, and then create the passport so that if we want to go visit these lands that were once all ours, you need to make sure you have your papers. I don't think this was the world that was created for all of us. I think it was the complete opposite. And it's been 100% infiltrated worldwide. And it's beginning to feel more and more like everyone's starting to realize that. And I was looking at this area and saw these two buildings in the background that clearly look out of place. So let's check this one out first. A building that was taken over by the Russian Navy, where they tell us that an earlier wooden church sat on the exact same site. And then we have the other palace that we just saw. And remember, all of these buildings, they're all right next to each other. This is the Trinity Cathedral. Let's show the world that the lie is over. It's game over for the mainstream narrative. And there is no going back. We will all never forget this. The more and more people that see the lies, the faster the truth is going to be shown to us, where we are told that the Trinity Cathedral was constructed in 1828 to 1835, and in 2006, the blaze apparently started on scaffolding on the outside of the church, which was undergoing restoration. And we all know that restoration really means destruction. I have something to add on. Is there a world under our feet that we're unaware of? Buried by mud and dirt? Sure, New York and Chicago and the major cities have tunnel systems, and we know this. But where it gets crazy is that it isn't just the major cities. It's even in cities such as Oshkosh, Wisconsin. These tunnels underground have been used for many things back in the day. Back in the day? No, we aren't just brushing this one off anymore with the back in the day stuff. It goes on to say, one of those things was running liquor back and forth from building to building. So even in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, the buildings are connected underground with zero construction photos of anyone ever connecting a building to another one. Are you seeing the lie even clearer now? Should we go even deeper? Here we go. Now, I mentioned Oshkosh in episode 40, and we went there and saw that they have griffins on the top of their building. Now, we know this town also has a tunnel system that connects all the buildings together. So when I was showing how the windows are all below the current ground level, this is what I'm talking about. There is a tunnel system. These buildings are so much bigger than we can see. And how deep are these tunnels? What is down there? And you know, something crazy is going on in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, when you have massive military contracts awarded to Oshkosh Defense. On December 16th, 2022, Oshkosh Defense LLC announced that the U.S. Army placed a $543 million order. We are always told to trace the money, right? A massive military corporation providing aid to the Army, Marines, Air Force, and Navy. Who is really in charge of this town, setting up these kind of operations and massive contracts? So we have tunnels, massive military contracts, griffins on the buildings, pillars and columns everywhere. And there is a book called Oshkosh Down Under. And look at this stuff. We have photos of the entrance to the tunnel from the old Mercy Medical Hospital. Tunnels in the 1800s? Not only were they building above ground, but also below? Here we have the tunnel from the hotel to the Opera House. And there's even a sign saying tunnel to the courthouse. Remember, these tunnels connect all of the buildings, not just one. There is a massive tunnel system right below the sidewalk. So when you go back and watch episode 40, remember that there are now proven tunnels below where I was standing. This is crazy stuff. In the future, if you guys like this kind of stuff, I'll go back to Oshkosh and see if we can get inside the tunnels. And so we're clear, these tunnels were found and repurposed by our current civilization, in my opinion. This book states that they used the tunnels to transport prisoners from the jail to the courthouse, which they no longer do. But this is not what it was originally used for, of course. Here we have a photo of the entrance to the tunnel from the county safety building, taken by the city of Oshkosh. So these tunnels were no secret. It's incredible. Now in 1944, we have a witness that states she was working for Gateway Valley Wholesale Liquor, located next to a private garage. She left for lunch one day and saw an area that was going down into the hotel. And this opened up into a tunnel, leading underneath the alley and into the hotel. She says that she remembers seeing glass cubicles that brought light down into the tunnel by using the sun, of course. And to prove her story to be true, there is a map below from the Sanborn Fire Insurance Map of 1903. So they had to report their map to the insurance company. And the map shows that there are, in fact, tunnels under the hotel. So when I was showing you all the windows that were at the current ground level in episode 40, and also the exact same thing, most likely going on in ancient Champaign, episode 36, in my opinion, I think that all of these tunnels in all of these cities and towns lead to a central point. And I think that this point is where the Freemasons set up their lodge. I think the lodge is the central point of all the tunnels. But that's just where my opinion stands at the moment, based on all of my research. The police were the ones enforcing the prohibition. These tunnels lead from the courthouse to the jail, and all the places that were enforcing the prohibition, including the courthouse, and many other places, but my point is, this wasn't designed to smuggle alcohol by gangsters and bootleggers. You wouldn't design your tunnel to go right to the jail, or the courthouse, or the police station. These tunnels were used for a much different reason for the previous civilization. And how deep do these things go? Are there more that we don't know about? Are there buildings completely covered by the dirt that we can't see? And this is not the only town that this kind of stuff is taking place in. For example, we have the Ybor tunnels located in Tampa, Florida. There is no doubt that tunnels do exist under Ybor City, but their purpose is highly debated. The most common belief is that bootleggers or the Tampa Mafia dug the tunnels under many of the establishments along the city's main drag, connecting them to the port, allowing easy smuggling of shipments of liquor in and out of the city. So another narrative saying this was for smuggling liquor, with zero evidence, as this was just a common belief. Who says that this is a common belief? Who gets to decide that? This is not what I believe at all. Not even close. I believe that these tunnels were there before, found and repurposed possibly, but not created for alcohol smuggling. This is crazy. All over the world they use this crazy narrative, building massive tunnels that connect so many buildings together perfectly. All for alcohol? No way. A reminder, of course, that this was done by a civilization that rode around on horses and couldn't even build a road. Dirt roads, but incredible tunnel systems around the world. Give me a break. They couldn't even build a road on the ground. Why should we believe that they could create connecting massive tunnel systems below the ground, all over the world, all for alcohol? And was there something that these tunnels had underground that we weren't allowed to see, or are possibly still there? Did they have the previous civilization's items, their technology? This is a classic example of using the previous civilization's technology and saying this is the first time. We really honestly don't come up with ideas very often. All of these things that we're told are invented in the last 200 years at rapid speeds and are all things that the previous civilization already had. And was there only one previous civilization? Or has this happened many, many times before? And do you want to see how this works? Do you think this is a one-off? Would you like to see how the narrative is coming from a single source, telling the narrator what to say to us, lying and repeating the same story over and over and over, just like the news, being told what to say and not actually showing proof of anything, just guessing and telling us that it is common belief, never even seeing a bottle of alcohol down in one of these tunnels, and we just accept it. Well, not anymore. We're all allowed to question it and use common sense and use only facts to form how we look at things. The tunnels of Benicia. Not only are we given the exact same narrative as the other two tunnels, but we are also given the exact same words. Bootleggers transporting alcohol through the hidden tunnels in California. This is the exact same story, yet thousands of miles away from each other. From Oshkosh to Florida to California. How do they all know how to make perfect tunnels underground, but cannot build a road on the ground? Never a mistake, just perfect tunnels, all connecting to all of the buildings. Now knowing this information, how can we even look at a building with windows under the current ground level the same ever again? And this paragraph is showing it to us again, that all of these things that we are suggesting make so much more sense than the crazy narrative that we are told, suggesting that there were people before us and that our narrative is lying to us about it for their benefit and to hold power over the people. Why would that be shocking? It isn't. It is also so much more believable than the crazy timeline that we are given. And the mistakes make it clear that there were dirt roads, yet there were perfect tunnel systems underground with no power tools. Who is transporting the people to these tunnel sites? An Uber? No. They were supposedly riding their horse home in time for dinner. Now this paragraph states that arguably a more proper and kid-friendly explanation... Wait, before we continue. They again don't know why these tunnels are here and just making things up. Okay, here we go. Some mysterious people that we don't know who they are say that the tunnels were originally created as an escape route for the town's elites. Believers of this theory claim that there was a tunnel entry point at the Capitol building, connecting to the clock tower and surrounding buildings. The underground route would allow for the city's elites to safely escape militaristic threats. Now, this tunnel system is supposedly connecting all the old world buildings together, exactly like we have shown in the other cities. My question is, what in the world is underground? And how big are these buildings? I definitely don't think that the dirt is just hiding some tunnels. These old world buildings that look insane above ground must have unbelievable stuff underground that we cannot see. How big is the Cologne Cathedral? What kind of tunnel systems are under these major cities? It's incredible stuff. The door is now wide open for us to go even deeper, literally and figuratively. If we're able to get our hands on technology that can see underground, one day, this could be bigger than we ever imagined. Oh, and we're not done yet, because I'm not leaving evidence on the table. We have the Bavarian tunnel system, where we are told, and I quote, that there were 3 separate tunnels connected to at least 4 different buildings at the Bavarian brewery. More alcohol and more tunnels and more buildings. And even more uncertainty from the narrator. The north entrance was reportedly in the boiler house, but it may have been in the engine room structure, which was converted to a bottling department after Prohibition. So it might have been, but we really don't know what we're talking about, because we found these tunnels and we're clearly lying. Let's scroll down and take a look at this together. And keep in mind what words they are using. They don't know how these tunnels got here. What they write is a complete lie in my opinion. Here we go. They also illustrate that tunnel T3 had been bricked up by 1950. Wait, what? They bricked the tunnel up? I wonder what they didn't want us to see in 1950. And this was probably done sometime during Prohibition, but of course they aren't sure. And we are supposed to just accept that. There would have been staircases in both of these buildings providing access to the tunnel. And it is believed, but totally unsure again, in the exact same paragraph, there is so much guessing and uncertainty, but it is believed that tunnel T2 was used beginning in 1907, possibly until the brewery was closed in 1966. Possibly. So they are unsure about all of this. They don't know anything. They are trying their best to explain away massive tunnel systems that were here in the 1800s, that do not fit into the narrative, that connect massive buildings together during a time period that people supposedly had candlelight. Do we all understand how hard it would be to dig out all of this dirt and form massive tunnel systems? The dirt would have to go somewhere. Do you think nobody would notice this dirt? And this would take so long that surely somebody would notice the dirt sitting there eventually. They didn't have dump trucks that could take the dirt away in a day. Surely somewhere in the world where these tunnels were being built, some authority figure would have some questions. Like, what are you guys doing over there? With massive amounts of dirt piling up and thousands of pounds of limestone for the walls. The narrative sounds so insane and a joke, because it is. And I'm so thankful that we are on the other side of this narrative now, not just blindly accepting it because we're told to. So what happened to this tunnel? Well, in 2017 to 2019, during the construction of the Kenton County Government Center, Turner Construction reported encountering multiple tunnels. So there were even more tunnels than we're told about. And T2 and T3 were in their way. So Turner demolished the tunnels. So let's move to Cincinnati, Ohio, where 40 feet below the current ground level, 10,000 square feet of tunnels were supposedly built in 1855. Now, after everything that we have said, this is just insane. Another tunnel system in the 1800s, and they aren't going to tell us that this one was used for alcohol too, or will they? Oh, of course they will. This one belonged to the Link Brewery, which was a half a mile away from the tunnels. What? Wait, the brewery was a half a mile away from the tunnels? But they are taking credit? Why did they need massive tunnels? To age the beer in underground tunnels? Are you kidding me? After Prohibition ended in 1933, the tunnels were useless and filled up and destroyed. Wow. This, in my opinion, is literally proving that Prohibition was an excuse for these tunnels. And now that we can drink alcohol again, we're all cool with them just destroying these tunnels from the past civilization. Over and over and over. This is the excuse. But in January of 2018, they accidentally made a mistake and discovered more tunnels during renovation. So 2 months later, they didn't have any other choice but to show them off to the public. And what do they care? Everyone is buying the narrative at this point, that these massive tunnel systems are here. Because of the alcohol ban from back in the day. You can even see in Atlanta, Georgia, where their city is basically all above ground. And there are stores underground that used to be there. It's so weird. And Kansas City has one too. And then we were told in about 1887, a 22-foot wide, 18-foot tall, and 810-foot long tunnel system right under the people's feet in Kansas City. Why have we not gone and investigated this one? Well, it was sealed off in 1956 and basically forgot about. I wonder why it was forgot about. Well, maybe because it was sealed off. Definitely an agenda, working all over the world, working together to hide the true history. And we see it over and over again, covering so many different topics, the tunnel system being only one of them. I hope you all enjoyed this episode today. I've always been really interested in the tunnel systems and all of the underground stuff, including Denver Airport, where they supposedly built a brand new airport when they didn't even need a new airport, that now has a lot of buildings that were buried and connected underground. So the past civilization showed the way, and it continues today, right in front of our faces and now right below our feet. If you all like this video and want to see more, subscribe, like, and let me know in the comments below. The more we dig, the more we find. Here we have an image of a diploma for the American Pacific Exposition and Oriental Fair for Portland, Oregon in 1905. So 1904, they have the St. Louis World's Fair. 1 year after, we get this one in Oregon. This diploma is very interesting. As we go down to the bottom, we have a photo, and we can clearly see in the background 2 airships, both looking different. They normally don't show this form of transportation in these photos. They normally blank out the sky. But as we look up all of these countries, we see the big ones, and then we see Caucasia. Have any of us heard of a country in the 1900s named Caucasia? I personally have never heard of Caucasia, which is similar to Tartaria. All of these countries that we were never told about. But this one wasn't hundreds of years ago. This was 1905. So they are now, in my opinion, lying and telling us that Caucasia, or Caucasus, is a region that has a bunch of countries in it, including Russia, which we all know have connections to Tartaria. But let's take a look at this list again from 1905. They are already listing Russia on this map with Turkey, France, Holland, Germany, Switzerland, Italy. All of these are countries. They are not regions. I'll say it again. These are countries. Why would they then throw a region in there randomly? That doesn't make any sense. I think we are finding, in my opinion, that there is more land that we aren't being told about that was here in the 1900s. And I think Caucasia is being hidden from us right now. So we were given a photo with the airships in the background in the sky. So I went digging and found this photo from 1905, World's Fair in Oregon, showing more airships. In my opinion, and a few others, this form of travel was all over the place. It wasn't just created in the 1800s, and the Hindenburg event was used as a scare tactic to make these airships look faulty, removing this free energy form of transportation technology out of our lives. Do you really think that they put a gas in these airships that would be so incredibly flammable and fly them over massive cities? Or does it make more sense that this Hindenburg event was a planned event to get rid of this free form of travel and wipe it from the history books? Here we have a photo of one of these airships sitting in between the 2 spires of the old world building. You can see that they use these spires to electrically charge these airships, and this was common knowledge. And in the very next photo, it's leaving the port. We are not given the truth about our history. This isn't something that we are ever told about in our mainstream schooling system all over the world. Do you find that odd? Let's keep digging. We see that the US Army had this technology in the 1800s, as well as the Navy. Now, this is a photo from July of 1931, and we clearly have an airship charging at the top of this building. So we have a lot going on here, and this was within the last 100 years. An airship charging at the top of this tower. Did you think they only charged at the top of buildings? Of course not. They had charging docks in the middle of the water. Here we have a photo of the US Navy airship in 1924, charging from this boat. Now let's zoom in on this charging station to get a good look at what's going on here. Now this is a technology that we were never told about. This is hidden from our timeline. a clear proof that there is much more to the story than what we've been told, especially since this was not thousands of years ago, and shows how easily history can be rewritten. This technology should be common knowledge at this point. Here we have another angle in Rhode Island of the charging taking place. And if we switch angles here, we can actually see the charging tool that was used right at the top of this tower. They're clearly about to connect to the airship. So this, in my opinion, is clearly explaining what's going on at the top of these old world buildings. They were charging stations for the airships. They have the same features, and I guarantee you that they still turn on, since this was not that long ago. And I'm gonna take this time right now to answer a lot of people's question. Will we ever find the truth? As we keep uncovering more and more documented evidence, we're gonna find that the previous civilization was not that far in the past, and our current structures hold so much more technology than we ever truly understood. So in my opinion, yes, we are gonna find the truth about all of this. We are uncovering the truth faster and faster, and this community gets bigger and bigger, with more and more people sharing their thoughts and knowledge. The mainstream history is becoming comedy hour at this point. So we can clearly see that these buildings all around the world may have had a second purpose, but they were without a doubt here to generate free energy, specifically for airships. And once you realize this, then we can go deeper and ask the question, was the previous civilization capable of using these buildings to power their flight that were so much more powerful, so much faster, and so much more incredible than an airship? I believe that they fully understood this technology. They were the ones that constructed it. They had this technology and were able to travel through the air so much faster than we can today, while using the Earth's natural energy. These buildings are technology. They are able to extract the energy and are able to turn it into a fuel. If you're looking for a why, a motive to suppress this technology, well, it would 100% benefit a civilization, us. It's free. There is zero benefit to free transportation, free energy. Do we need to go further for the why? So when you go around your town now and see the top of these buildings, we can all understand how popular this form of transportation really was. It was everywhere. Now, we have talked about Tartaria. We have shown in this episode in the beginning how there are possibly more countries and more land, such as Caucasia. So we have Tartaria, but we also have Barbaria, where you would get the term barbarians. And of course, again, have any of us heard of a place called Barbaria in history class? Maybe you have now. But in mainstream history, this is not something that is taught to us. We're not being told the truth about any of this. And we have many maps of a land called Barbaria. For a bonus today, I have a lot of things that I want to share that I've found in my research. And I don't want to just brush over them, but I do want to share them with you all. I found this photo from Portland, Maine, of the old city hall. In their newspaper from 1888, they wrote that it was built in 1825 and was used in 1832. So this was going on like 200 years ago. And you can see what they're all riding around on. They were able to build these kind of structures so fast, apparently, that after 63 years, this thing was so outdated and needed to be demolished. And it's interesting because this exact story is given to us all over the USA. And in all honesty, it's all over the world. It's weird how we were told that they lived in sheds, yet could afford to knock down relatively new structures like this. Oh, and we are told that they built this thing with a population of like 8,000 people. Like I said before, anyone on a horse, a donkey, and anyone who had a wagon, a shovel, or a chisel was born with incredible architecture skills in the 1800s. It's incredible stuff. And I know some of you have mentioned this topic in the comments below. Well, here is a conveniently half-destroyed photo from the 1904 World's Fair. And if we just zoom in a little, you can see what this exhibit was. And here's the description we are given. Served as a fair attraction and a working hospital. This is normal for a fair attraction? These fairs have a much darker purpose than what we have been told. Just read that last sentence. They were brought from hospitals to the concessions. Well, they were brought from somewhere, and this is such a weird thing. Using common sense, how many mothers would allow their kid that is born early to leave the hospital to be, in their own words, an attraction at a fair? Let's use our brains a little now. These are not coming from the hospital, in my opinion, that this was an operation to populate these cities again. And when did Ellis Island start taking immigrants? New Year's Day, 1892? perfect time to start an operation? You don't find it odd that right around the exact same time period as these World's Fairs, you have these operations to refill the USA back up with a brand new batch of people? Now let's go back to the airships. Here's a photo from 1935, after they removed the airships from our timeline, and they were using the hangar for the airplanes now. And look at the size of this hangar, just to prove how massive these airships were in comparison. The amount of people that could have been on this airship were in the thousands. Here's a sketch of the interior of an airship, and you can see they were incredible. They had bedrooms, dining areas, all of the things that you would do if you were going to treat a society with respect, instead of our form of travel now, where we are all just jammed in next to each other and forced to suffer for hours. So I know this isn't a real photo, but honestly, who knows at this point what the previous civilization was capable of? What kind of things were in these airships that we aren't being told about? Water parks? Events? We know these airships were real. They were everywhere, and they were massive, and not a part of the narrative. They put the brakes on them really quick to trick our civilization into thinking that we're advancing into the airplane, when in reality, we had it made with the airship. Now, there are so many pictures of these vehicles all over the place, and they were definitely interesting to look at and wonder. So I want to make sure that I'm able to share these pictures here with everyone, so that you don't have to go on a scavenger hunt all over the place for them. And I want to make this point clear, if I haven't already. These airships predate the airplane, and they'll even admit it in the mainstream narrative, that the airship was supposedly invented in 1852, which is a lie. It was long before this, and we know that here. And the airplane, as we've covered, was handed over to us in 1903. So 51 years later, rapid speeds, new technology just flying at us, literally. The problem with the 1852 date is that we have depictions of airships that predate the 1800s by civilizations. Knowing this information frees your mind. You are able to think for yourself. You are no longer trapped in the ridiculous mainstream society game that just goes around and drives people insane. You can step back and enjoy your life, knowing you are important. Your life is much more meaningful. This place that we all live was filled with great technology. A civilization, in my opinion, that used free technology, possibly no debt, possibly a place where everyone was able to take the time to enjoy their lives, instead of working to struggle. Again, it's very important to know this, since we all live in this place, that 100% changes and forms through your thoughts, through all of our thoughts. And when you have a different level of knowledge, your thoughts change for the better. It's very important to know that you are important, and your life is much more meaningful than you were ever made to believe from day one.